Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. VIMTV has been around for like 3.5 years, over 3.5 years.
Almost
now.
4, really.
We're getting up there.
Yeah.
Like pretty soon we're gonna have gray beards reviewing music as old guys, which that's cool.
Maybe that would give us more credibility.
You know, I probably would. I don't consider myself that credible now. I'm just a guy who listens to a lot of music, right? But back when we started, Tom, we were going through all of those 2009 albums. Now, we started in 2010, but there was a ton of 2009 albums that we were into at the time that we were wanting to review, and as we were getting our feet wet as music reviewers, or video music reviewers, you know, we definitely were learning all about music and how to listen to it and how to analyze it and how to really determine if an album was worthwhile of your time or not, if that's what you guys use us for. I mean, really, music reviews are mostly just entertainment, right? But, you know, they can be kind of passively used to be a good judge of if your tastes align with Tom and I, you know, it can be used as a good judge of whether or not you might like an album or not. One of the albums we reviewed from 2009 in 2010 was Neko Case's Middle Cyclone.
Yeah.
Middle Cyclone was an album that, you know, I don't think we gave it a super high score at the time, but I think that that's kind of because we didn't know what the hell we were doing.
That's true.
Because I know that both of us could not put that album down.
No.
The rest of 2010, I still come back to Middle Cyclone.
Oh yeah, it's one of my personal favorites. I came up on it a lot after we reviewed it.
Yeah, me too. And so, you know, waiting for Neko Case to come out with her next solo record has been something that, you know, I've been looking forward to for a couple years now. And finally, she releases her next solo album, which has a very long title. The worse things get, the harder I fight, the more I love you. Oh,
It's very sweet.
But you know what? It's almost like a Fiona Apple.
That's what I was gonna say. What is this, Fiona Apple album?
But I actually really like it because as a title, it really sets the stage for what's about to come.
It does.
Middle Cyclone was a great album in its construct, in the songwriting, and in Neko Case's performance and the instrumentation, but this adds another huge layer to it, which is just, this album is just overflowing with emotion. The rockier tracks on this album, I mean, Neko Case still has, you know, she started off as like a country artist, and then worked with, you know, she has a very iconic voice, has done a lot of work, if you don't know Neko Case's history, she's done a lot of work with the New Pornographers as a contributing member of that indie supergroup, and then had a very you know, large solo career so far. I mean, she's had a number of solo albums come out, and even a live album or two. And she's an established songwriter at this point. So, you know, you still have the great vocals on this album. You still have Neko Case's attention to detail with her great songwriting. Not a lot of structure to her songs. They kind of overflow with ideas and go in lots of different directions. It definitely still has that country noir element to it, but it's experimental in nature.
It definitely is. Everything about this album is way more extreme than much of her past work, looking specifically at Middle Cyclone because that's the stepping stone that we're coming off of into this record. And looking at it, I mean, wow, it's crazy to think that Middle Cyclone came out 4 years ago. It just reminds me how long we've been doing this, but it's about damn time because, you know, Neko Case is a very talented performer, songwriter, and musician in general. But what I mean when I say that this album is more extreme is just that the lows are even lower, the highs are even higher. Where there's a lot of layers, there's even more layers, incorporating a lot more electric guitars, some other kind of eclectic instrumentation, instrumental palette, horns, other kinds of strings. But when she breaks it down, I mean, it is like vocals and nothing else. And there are a number of tracks that are like that. I'm From Nowhere, Nearly Midnight Honolulu, Afraid, Where Did I Leave That Fire? Now, some of those do have some other instrumentals in there as well, but just very softly. I mean, all the focus is on Neko's vocal performance, the lyrics, all the different vocal layers that are going on. It takes the center stage and it tells a story more than anything. Yeah, and I love when you said like the highs are higher and the lows are lower. I mean, Neko Case's past, she's been able to do softer songs before, but I feel like on this song, she rocks the hell out at times. You know, if you look at track 3, Man, that song is loud, it's abrasive, it rocks out. There's a number of tracks on the back half that also rock out, and she just does a great job of building
building these intensities and adding layer upon layer to just take the sound dynamically from, you know, a 0 to an 11. And that's something that I really look for in a good songwriter, is how do they control dynamic intensity, because it is absolutely imperative, if you're going to grab your listener's attention, that you capture and hold the reins on the dynamics. You have to be able to knock the listener off their feet at least some point during the record if this is the style you're going for. Now, she did a great job of approaching this album with fluidity in mind. Those softer tracks that you mentioned, for reasons not only for album fluidity, but she spaced them out so that it offsets some of the heavier tracks, and it makes this album, listen, a very fluid one. You can put this on and let it play through, and it sounds like one cohesive set.
Yeah.
You brought up the lyrics.
Yes.
The lyrics are something we need to dive into, because not only do the lyrics they're dealing with, I wouldn't say it's a concept album, but it's definitely following similar themes and motifs, and it kind of helps package the sound of the album altogether. You know, there's a lot of cohesiveness in the sound amongst the tracks on the album, but there's also cohesiveness in the lyrics. Tom, what were the lyrics about to you? What were some of the major themes that you heard?
There were a lot of different themes here. I think say a lot of them deal with gender roles. Well, I don't want to say a lot of them, but that is something that comes up on tracks like Man, Even Calling Cards, and Local Girl, and there's this kind of ambivalence toward it. A lot of her performance and style in which she approaches these themes are somewhat bitter, somewhat kind of sarcastic.
Yeah.
And more than anything, the persona that she creates on this album, through her lyrics and the performance of those lyrics. I talk about persona as kind of a narrative persona on albums a lot, but this is a great example of it, because she has this very enigmatic, kind of like mysterious quality about her, but she also is like, she writes her lyrics as if she's this omniscient presence. Like, she can see into people's heads, see what they're feeling, and it just observes everything. You know, a lot of these tracks seem to be just based on observations and these kind of philosophical musings. So, right there, she just like emits this power almost over the lyrics and the topics at hand, and it makes her credible when you're listening to her. You can't help but get behind her.
And you know, it's that sort of authenticity that you know, we harp so much on. Does the artist provide enough warrant for the listener to give any kinds of shits about the music that they're listening to? And Neko Case totally does that. I mean, she's really emoting. I'd say if there's one difference in this album of any of her work I've heard before, it's that she's putting it all out there. She's doing a lot of soul searching, a lot of, you know, exploring where she comes from. You know, there's definitely even several references to her upbringing here and questioning her upbringing and where she comes from. And I think that the track that highlights that more than anything, and I think is one of the you know, kind of thesis statements of this album, is track 6, Nearly Midnight Honolulu. As Tom, as you said before, that track is very stripped down. It's mostly vocals and layered vocals, and it tells the story about this kid that was at a bus stop, and his mom, you know, tells him to, you know, go away. She doesn't love him, and Neko Case explains, you know, is like she's having a monologue towards that kid, speaking out to him out into the darkness of you know, anonymity. You're reaching out, saying, you know, you should speak out. I love you. You know, and it's just a really profound message, and you can hear a lot of Neko Case's own struggles within that message, and the way she sings it, the way they layer those vocals. I mean, it really just drives it home. I struggled with that track at first. The more I listened to it, the more I realized how important it was. And what I really like about it is I've never heard Neko Case take that big of a risk on any album. That is a risky track, especially to put it in the middle of the album, controls the whole flow, and yet it works. It sets the tone for the rest of the album, delivers an emotional punch, and I gotta say, she did a hell of a job producing it.
And she puts her vocals out there front and center, completely naked, nothing to hide behind. And another thing that song does that's really indicative of the rest of the album is how little she relies on repetition in verses or choruses. There's not much in the way of traditional hooks, but this album still hooks you in. And it does that just because she has that appeal to her voice, to her performance, to that persona I mentioned earlier.
Well, that's
and
just
it works,
good songwriting.
It is, and it works completely backwards of what most successful albums do, because most albums that really stick with you, the hooks grab you in, and then you learn about the rest of the album, where really this one, the songs are pretty short. This album is under 40 minutes, I'm pretty sure. And
but it's
still,
just the right length.
It sticks with you with minimal repetition, and just the fact that she's able to do that and bring you back into it just with the general aesthetic is quite an accomplishment.
What do you think you're going to give this one, Tom?
I'm giving this one an 87.
Okay, I'm right there with you. A little higher. 88.
All right.
So 88 from us. Now, I got to say, it took me a number of listens to really dissect this one. But once I started realizing what I was getting myself into and I was going through how she had written and composed this record, I was just kind of blown away. This is a very rewarding comeback listen. It's a grower, and those albums are my favorite because the albums that are kind of cool the first 3 listens and you're bored with them, to me, those albums don't have that comeback quality that Genius albums do. This album is worth the scores that other reviewers out there are giving it right now, and I think it's worth an 88 from us. If you guys haven't heard Neko Case's new solo record, please go out and listen to it, and leave us a comment telling us your thoughts at www.velocitiesandmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesandmusic. As always, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and let us know what albums from 2013 you've been into lately and would like to see Tom and I review on this channel. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.
Ragtime turning out, the sun and moon, its gravity is soothing, winds me in.